are the things as an adult now that you see as like things that made you want to either stop being within a religion, or just kind of like just have like a not a negative perspective, but more of an adult perspective of the religion where it just didn't sit right with you?
Well, I think I have to give like a little bit of background about that because there's two things that I think were key. But first of all, when you become a Jehovah's Witness and you get baptized, right? I don't know how other churches do it, but once you get baptized as a Jehovah's Witness, you are no longer allowed to question any of the doctrines, right? You've heard the word apostate, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you question the doctrines and tell people about it, they'll say that you're an apostate and you'll be disfellowshipped, like I said, kicked out. And also, if you violate any of the rules, if you have sex before marriage, if you, I don't know, or were violent somehow, if you smoke cigarettes and get caught, you can get removed from the religion for these things. Okay. And the problem is that, like I said, that will cut you off from all of your friends, family, leave you isolated. It's a pretty horrible experience. They also encourage people to get baptized at a very young age. So I got baptized when I was 12,
Mm-hmm.
along with a big group of kids. So you can imagine kids getting baptized at that young age. They haven't even hit puberty yet, right? So what happened was by the time that we were 18, 19, I mean, probably half of a group of 20 were already disfellowshipped. And if you can
Wow.
imagine people now 20 years old, not talking to their parents, you know, just out on their own, that sort of thing went on. So
Wow.
that was, so what that did to me was, and what it is meant to do is to scare you into staying. And it works very well. The threat of being disfellowshipped really does scare you into staying.
Wow.
So regardless of your questions that you have or your doubts that you have, you just think to yourself, well, I don't want to have that problem. I saw what happened to, sister so and so. I'm not going to have that happen to me. So when I was in about like 19 or so, I started thinking things through to myself, but I didn't really allow myself to check into things that I thought were untrue until I
Mhm.
was out of the house. I moved out when I was 24. And at that point, I allowed myself to start looking into some of the doctrines that I thought were not true, right? So one day I went to the library, and Jehovah's Witnesses have this doctrine, and it basically is the doctrine that they use to prove that they are the one true religion, right? And it involves a bunch of complex scriptures that supposedly prove that Jesus returned to rule the earth in 1914. Okay.
Hmm.
Your
Very-
face. Right. Okay. I'm not going to get all into
1914.
it. Right. And the importance of that date is that they use that date, 1914, with some other scriptures to prove that the leadership of the Jehovah's Witnesses that were living at that time were like chosen by God to care for true Christians. Right. So
That's different than what I learned, but go ahead. I'm learning.
it's different from a lot of people. So everything, all they get to this 1914 date based on like this biblical date of the fall of Babylon, which they've always told us since we were kids. Babylon fell in 607 BCE, 607 BCE, 607 BCE. So I go to the library and I'm like, well, let me just see if this date is correct, you know, because in my mind I'm like, the only way that they can prove that they supposedly have God's blessing to be an authority is through this 1914 date. So let me go to the library. I went to the library, I get all these books out, had 4 or 5 books of archaeology, and I'm looking, when is the fall of Babylon? And I'm looking, and it's a completely different date. I was like, what? And like all the books said the same thing. So I'm thinking to myself, well, where did Jehovah's Witnesses get this 607 BCE? Like
Hmm.
everybody else is saying 586 BC, totally different date, which would change up all their prophecies and all their doctrines. And it just struck me then. I was like, they're just lying. That's it. Because if all these archaeologists and experts say this is when this event happened, you know, I'm gonna believe the experts. Why would I believe you? I think you're
Right.
lying. That was a really important thing for me. It really changed. It just confirmed to me my suspicion that they weren't truthful. They weren't honest people that I was dealing with and working with. So that was the first thing. Yeah. And then the second thing, like that was like the erosion of my real belief of any real belief in the faith part of it, that like this
Right.
doctrine is true.
That's probably
But
like
then
a
I kind of
roof
hung.
shaking.
It was. But then I hung around because, like I said, just fellowshipping, right? I don't want to deal with that. And I was like, I'm living my life. At this point, I was single. I was living in an apartment. I had my friends. Um, but after a while, I started to get tired and I got in trouble, Jehovah's Witness type trouble. I made the very big, bad mistake of like kissing and hugging on my boyfriend of 2 years. Okay. A terrible person. So when you get in trouble like that, you're brought before what they call a judicial committee. I don't know if they have anything like this in another church. What the judicial committee is, it's 3 men, 3 elders who are like the ministers, right? And they'll come and they sit with you, and you're supposed to tell them your story of whatever you did by yourself. You sit and tell them your story, and then they decide if you can stay or if you're going to get kicked out or if they're going to
Wow.
give you some other kind of punishment.
Wow.
So, what happened to me was that when all this happened, I had already broke up with my boyfriend when they found out all the whatever they felt like they found out about us. And so instead of me having to sit with 3 men, I had to sit with 6 men by myself. And okay, I told my story. My story is like I was kissing my boyfriend, you know what I'm saying? That was basically the beginning and end of the story. And then they proceeded to ask me a bunch of other questions that they said that they had to ask me. All kinds of sexual questions about all kinds of sexual things, you know, that I did not do, you know, and it was humiliating. It was humiliating, and I was by myself, and I wasn't old enough, you know, and I didn't have the same. I wasn't the person I am now, where I would have just walked out and cussed everybody out. I
Mm-hmm.
sat there and I took it. I sat there and I took it because I was afraid of disfellowshipping. And to me, once I came out of that, I didn't get disfellowshipped. They gave me some other minor punishments, but I never felt the same way about the religion ever after that. I felt like I had been violated. That's what it felt like. And I never forgave those people for for doing that individually, and I felt like the whole organization was to blame because they put these rules into place to where I would be stuck in a position like that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
with a single woman and 6 men, basically just, in my opinion, it was just being disgusting. That's what it felt like.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's like intimidation. Like these men aren't your father. Okay. It's not like they have any heaven or hell to put you in. But I guess at that point they felt the need to like either correct you because they didn't want you to be out there being a Jezebel or, being a whore and bringing the stain to the Kingdom Hall's name. It's just
Right.
crazy to me.
And then they asked me questions like, like, did I do this sexual thing? Did I enjoy it? Did I have an orgasm? Child, I didn't even know what an orgasm was. That's how
Wow.
much of a virgin I was. I was like, huh? And later, when I had time to process it, I'm like, well, what difference does it make? Even if I had been having sex with this person, what difference does it make if I enjoyed it or not? Like, what is
Hmm.
going on in your mind? I decided there was a bunch of perverts. That's what I decided.
Right, right. That's very
Yeah.
unfortunate, and I'm pretty sure you're not the first female that to ever go through something like that, and
Mm-mm.
that doesn't I mean, it happens even within the Christian faith as well. I'm sitting here thinking about like I never had to really sit down, but I remember at one point there was a cousin of myself. She was in a relationship with this man who was older than her, and they were both consenting adults of being in a relationship. And she was the one that was put on the stage as far as like as if she was wrong for being in a relationship with this man. And the man pursued her, and they're both of age. Yes, she was younger than him, and he was probably like 10 years older than her, but at the same time, she was still of age to make the decision that she wanted to be with this man. And the
Right,
church and
exactly.
the church leadership, who was a man, brought her before and was dragging her through. And that you never know, like, how that can make an impact on someone's relationship with God. You know, that does that's really unfortunate. Very
Yeah,
unfortunate.
it's what business is it really of anybody what decision a grown adult makes? Because if your
Hmm.
relationship is between you and God, I don't need you to judge me. God would have that covered, right?
Right.
So, what is the point of me sitting down and confessing anything to anybody?
Right.
Okay. Because when I read the Bible, and I did read the Bible, and that was another thing. I read the Bible. I read a lot of stuff that I didn't read in a Watchtower. And what I read in the Bible was basically the relationship is supposed to be me and Jesus, you
Hmm.
know, and Jehovah's Witnesses have Jesus separate from God, but that's it. There's nobody else that's supposed to be involved in there. So why are you all trying to run my life?
Right. Exactly. Um, I know in the Bible it talks about minding your own business, and that's in Thessalonians and something. Don't quote me now, people. Whoever want to watch this, don't quote me. I know it's in Thessalonians because that was the first time that I ever read the scripture, and it was like in the message format, and it said mind your business. It was like, not the Bible having shade, not the Bible trying to tell you mind your business. Exactly what we're supposed to do, because like like growing up, I always heard every man has to work on their own soul salvation. Like your mom can't do it for you, your dad can't do it for you. You have your own life to live. So what is it that we have to pass judgment on others and crucify others instead of uplifting? It's not like you were selling yourself. I could see if they was like, yo, Maya, you out here prostituting. You can't do that, Maya. Like, what is it that we need to do to teach you? And number one, a man shouldn't be able to talk to you without the presence of a woman. Why, with all of that, then their good is being evilly spoken of. Where they do that at?
Exactly. Exactly. And the interesting thing to me is that if you're a single woman, as a witness, these men can do whatever they want to you. They can just take you in the back and drag you and talk about whatever. But as soon as you get married, then they're like, oh no, we have to go through your husband, you know? So once I got married, I had more protection. But that made me think to myself, well, what would have you go and feel like you could really disrespect young women like that? And a lot
Right,
of women complain as witnesses, like, you should be able to take somebody else with you if you're going to sit
right,
before these people, another woman, to make sure that nothing happens that's out of place.
right. So do you know, as of right now, like has there been any changes where like a female has more of that type of approach now when it comes down to single women, or is it still like the same standard?
Oh, no, it's the same. No, absolutely nothing of that's changed. I hate to say this, has made me feel better, but maybe I would say it has made me feel validated. Is when it happened to me, I felt like I was the only one, and then I would tell some people about it, and they're like, "You're the only one." But since since moving away from the religion and reading a lot of people's stories, it's happened to many, many, many other witness women. It's a pretty common story, but unfortunately, there's nothing has changed about it.
Mm. So